ShadowDark, it's been praised by tons of YouTubers in the TTRPG space. It's old school D&D at its finest, they say, but is it really? Is it worth all that hype? Or is OSR just a fun buzzword for millennials who didn't grow up playing AD&D? The entire pitch of ShadowDark is rather self-explanatory. It's old school gaming made modern, and that's what's supposed to get you to pick up the book. It retains the outlook of delving into dungeons, dying, and attempting again with a new sorry sucker trying their best to make riches. My experience with old school, the true old school, is basically guys coming into the store and telling me how D&D used to be greater, but I've been reading the first and second edition rules and also talking about it with my friends, and fractions mixed with whole numbers does not make a fun time. Personally, I'm not sure where this whole OSR thing starts and stops. I was birthed into the boom of the 5e 2014 edition, which means I'm kind of a new kid on the block. I'm basically more of a modern gamer. I mean, for me, OSR doesn't really mean a reclamation of the old, and I think that's the same for a lot of people, even amongst the old heads I talk to in the store. To me, it seems that OSR is something more nebulous, so let me explain what I think more people think OSR is. Ultimately, yeah, I know genres are just cataloging games for the sake of convenience, so ultimately this is a fruitless endeavor, but hang with me. When someone tells me a game is a D&D-like game with an OSR take, I understand that to mean a more pared-down version of D&D with a focus on a specific aspect, where the mechanics are nice and crunchy for that one thing, but otherwise it's completely streamlined. Morkborg is an OSR take on a fantasy RPG influenced by death metal and design, and ultimately dying and dying again. Mothership is sci-fi horror distilled into digestible zines. Now, the gritty throwback to 2nd edition or old school D&D is even more common in the OSR space. Dungeon Crawl Classics, Knave, Cairn, Old School's Essentials, Mythic Bastionland, Five Torches Deep. I'm sure there are more. I could go on and on and on. Now, all of these games have something that makes them unique, and I do actually like a lot of these games. It gives them a different experience and feel. But in conversations, OSR doesn't mean old school. It means streamlined. It means sleek. It even means, perhaps, the dreaded rules light roleplay first. At least when I talk to old heads, this is what they say OSR means to them. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's really the best look and feel that I can take, having read different rule books that are the sleek version of what D&D has become. Now, speaking of sleek, ShadowDark is sleek. It's presented in this black tome. Its cover features nothing but a grotesque, pustule-filled beholder. The reality is that we judge a book by its cover, and the pitch presented here is an unforgiving delve into something evil. The black background, darkness creeping in, I think it's pretty apparent what the killer feature of ShadowDark is. On one hand, monsters are deadly. On the other hand, this darkness does serve a mechanical purpose in the game. For those of you unfamiliar, I am crafting a Western D&D campaign setting book, and boy oh boy did this book show me why presentation is important, especially in reference to art and layout. For me, a poorly ordered or unappealing layout will deter me for something, and as a DM, part of the fun comes from sucking in everything through those pages. Ultimately, it presents a really tactile feel here. It invokes the old school, but it introduces elements that make this a new piece, something that adds to the TTRPG ecosystem. Everything is very clearly a deliberate choice, where with some of those old rule books, I often hazard to try and enter the mind of the artists that were drawing the pictures that I'm looking at. Now, when you're playing ShadowDark, especially as the DM, boy oh boy, do the mechanics of the game make this super easy. The rules are really clear and concise, and everything's paced out appropriately. The tables in this are kind of ridiculous with how many options you get. This is certainly one of those games that you could run an entire session based off of vibes and dice rolls. I think it might even be too many tables for something like that, but you have plenty of options. The DM screen, actually, that I have is built off of nothing but tables. As a result, it's basically an agnostic DM screen, and it's kind of bad. I kind of need things to like track initiative or just basic rules that are important for me to remember while I'm running the game. I'd rather not have to print out tons of pages, and this DM screen really sucks. I don't like it. When you're running ShadowDark, though, they introduce a lot of mechanics that basically streamline exactly what you need to run a game, especially with strangers, which is what I've done for the past month. I think something that's really, really interesting with ShadowDark is essentially the fact that you just go around a table one at a time saying what you're doing in a clockwise rotation, which I know sounds really, really simple, but this makes it really easy to track people and also get everybody engaged in the action, because when you run games in public, some people aren't talkers and some people talk too much. Now, this isn't just for the sake of running a game in public, of course. What makes this really good is that it allows me to pay attention to another mechanic that is actually very important to ShadowDark and adds a layer of tension. You see, this game has torches as a bit of a currency. You can't see in the ShadowDark, but the monsters can. So if your torches run out, well, things are gonna get pretty bad pretty fast. Basically, a torch lasts an hour or 10 rounds, so I would go around 10 times at the table, and then when it ran out, I would say the torch goes out. And then everybody at the table starts panicking and gasping and trying to figure out what to do next, as whatever action they were doing or about to do has instantly gotten much harder. For example, I had a party that was delving into a bit of a sandy tomb, and even better than that, the tomb had living sand within inside it, sand that would engulf them, but there was a MacGuffin that they needed at the bottom of the pit with the living sand. So they were precariously lowering down one of their friends into it, to which then, of course, the torch went out. Now, I had been keeping track all 10 rounds. It happened to be serendipity that it happened here. I was ecstatic as a DM. They were horrified as players. We all had an amazing time, as they all panicked to try and save their friend, who was a dwarf, and often had a bit of a hard time getting out of the hole, while also trying to gather the gem and get out of there. Now, of course, I'd tell them if the torch was getting close to the end sometimes. Other times, I'd introduce a little bit of, oh, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see that it's flickering. And oh man, did this just make for some great gameplay. Everybody basically became a very tactical person while also still staying in character, which is actually really hard. Because I found high-level D&D becomes, oh, we're role-playing and embodying our characters, then combat starts, and everybody's the most min-maxy general of the army possible. Hear me out, bit of a vanity item I'd like for ShadowDark. An hourglass that lasts an hour, okay? Like a ShadowDark hourglass with like dark sand in it, okay? Like, you guys can see how this would be a really fun aid. I might pick up an hour-long hourglass just for myself. But boy, oh boy, would something like that add a nice little bit of flair to that whole torch mechanic, which is by far one of the best ways to get people introduced to basically every system that exists within ShadowDark. I mean, equipments use slots instead of encumbrance. Great idea, torches take up a slot. So basically everything revolving around the whole dungeon delving aspect of ShadowDark is the best stuff. It's also where you're going to be spending the majority of your time when you're playing with players. So there's a lot to enjoy there. I find that people that are more into the Dark Soulsian type experience tend to go towards ShadowDark, which I know is kind of like a reviewer's faux pas to even compare something to Dark Souls, but I'm sorry, I guess this is my one that I get for the year. But there's something that's been nagging at me as I'm writing this review. What is the level of complexity that I need when it comes to running a TTRPG? On one hand, yeah, I really love rules light systems. On the other hand, I actually really like complicated rules systems. So OSR TTRPGs put me in a weird spot. They are both and neither, and really it shows me how poor of a convention genre organizing really is. So really, mechanically, what the heck is ShadowDark? If we really distill it down, it's D&D minus the chaff. Like, I could use this as tabletop players' first RPG with good reason. I mean, the core rules featured the classes you'd expect of the old school without the quirk of the new ones. Cursed Scrolls reintroduced some of those other quirkier classes with optional rules flavored around a theme. So the one that I had just spoken about is Arabian Nights' deserty pit fighters and bazaars and djinn, including a pit fighter class which is kind of like a barbarian fighter mix. Basically, if ShadowDark is lacking something, there is a robust framework of things to add back into it. There are dungeons, there are tons of different community-made things to help bring new life into ShadowDark. But really, ultimately, what you're going to be doing, regardless of cursed scrolls, is dungeon delving. I mean, it makes sense. This isn't something to complain about. It's the RPG trappings that are hanging off this rack like pieces of succulent meat. You can't not enjoy it. You need to delve into dungeons to collect loot, and you need to collect loot in order to level up. So you have a mechanical incentive to risk your life and your characters to grow and get this get rich or die trying mentality, which ultimately, this kind of attitude that you bring to the table when you know that gold is the way that you level up, it makes for vastly different characters than D&D. You get a lot of heroes in D&D. You get a lot of scoundrels in ShadowDark, and that's with intent. I can't even begin to tell you how good it is that the equipment, the loot, the dungeoning, everything around that combines so well into such a mechanically cohesive experience. It presents itself to making conflicts in the game. It solves the problems in the game. When I'm talking about dungeon delving in this game, make no mistake, everything about this game is the dungeon delving. It is what makes this game good. Now, of course, low level still suffers from the same issues that D&D suffers with, which is that you don't have enough options. And when you get to the high levels, you have too many options, and things can get a lot cheesier. I think ultimately marshals suffer the worst for this. At least with the spellcasting classes in ShadowDark, you have a little bit more to play with, even at the low levels. But a martial player is really doing just one thing when they're a low-level ShadowDark player. Now, this is a small gripe with ShadowDark. With all this dungeon delving stuff, it does kind of present me with a bit of a prep issue. I tend to find myself prepping pretty lean, and so my first time running ShadowDark, I ended up showing up and then going, damn, I didn't make a dungeon. I need to make one up in my head. I kind of needed a map. Now, of course, there are supplements you can get to have printout maps, but I did not have that. I really would like some big cardstock dungeon pieces similar to the character sheets that I can kind of like mix match and make like slapdash dungeons out of that kind of connect together. I know there are single page dungeon cards you can get, but they're not as good as something that would be bigger that you can put a miniature on. Also, the hour torch thing just does not work when I'm running games for the public. We're talking like a game that's like 3.5 hours. Now, if I'm sitting down for a 5-hour evening with friends, yeah, that's fine. Absolutely, we could do that whole hour-long thing. I can't do that. If I want people to experience the mechanics, I'm going to need to make some tweaks, and that's why I did the 10 rounds around the table, which is a mechanic in the game, but it was like, okay, well, now I need to extrapolate it and track something else, and ultimately, I want to stay focused on my players and not be focused on tracking economy. I feel like any kind of dumping on ShadowDark, though, is like me making a serious evil decision or something, okay? Like, I have a lot of small gripes, you're hearing them, but probably the worst for me, as somebody who preps very lean, is that monsters are listed alphabetically, not by how deadly they are. I don't know, man. We need to come up with another way. CR is not great, but I need some kind of shorthand, especially when I'm creating from the hip, running a session with like nearly zero prep, which some people might argue is not the right way to do things, but also I do this, I have a job, I stream, I run a business. I need all the help I can get, man, come on. Like, I get it, give me something to come up with creatures, otherwise I end up fudging things, and I really don't want to do that, because sometimes I like to put the dice in front of people and then show them all the suspense, but it makes it very difficult when stuff like that happens. But yeah, I get it. I know why monsters are listed alphabetically. I know why CR is being phased out. I get it. I'm just saying we need like a lethality counter or something, so that way I can more easily understand what's going on. And also, I kind of just like doing a bit of a jazz band style session where I'm just making up everything as I go, and it's all going well and everybody's very invested, which has happened many a time. I tend to be really good at it, actually. I think one of the good things, though, for ShadowDark is that things from 5e transplant really easily, and the act of playing it as a tense, mechanically rich game is definitely possible. But I definitely feel as a DM that on my side of things were kind of lacking. I don't know. I just want a more robust system as a DM, something to help me along, okay? Again, these are little things that I think during actual play, they don't really even pay attention. I could definitely see it becoming more of an issue during long campaigns instead of me running one-shots. I feel like my complaints would be hand-waved away by just grognards and curmudgeons, but a few of these issues really do hamper play, and I honestly, nobody noticed, but I'm a seasoned DM, so I can basically just brush away the things I don't like. But this all has me asking a really hard question, because some of these things are things that push me away from RPGs, and I find myself really at odds with ShadowDark because I want to like it. Everyone tells me I should like it, but should I like it if I don't really like it? Look, I played an obscene amount of TTRPGs. ShadowDark definitely has a lot of staying power, and I like it. If you don't recognize why it does have that staying power, you're kind of ignoring what makes it fun for a lot of people. I almost feel awful for not being enthusiastic or being cautiously optimistic about it. I like it, it's good, it's truly a gateway game into the OSR systems, and I like the mechanics that are in it. Some of them I've implemented at my public tables. I run kids D&D, for example, and I know this isn't like a new thing, but the clockwise around the table thing has saved me. Like, literally, it is one of the best like house rules I've had, and I wouldn't have even thought of it if I didn't read the ShadowDark rulebook. I know this sounds ridiculous. I'm a working DM, guys, okay? I gotta corral a table of strangers. We take from what we read and we apply it in life, which, I mean, I'm sure there's some really witty quote I could put there to be like, ain't that interesting how Gary Gygax said that same thing? I don't know. I think for me, when I'm looking at OSR games, I prefer something a bit more subversive. I really like Morkborg, but I know why long campaigns exist in ShadowDark and not Morkborg. ShadowDark's got more like wires. It's like a breadboard where you could plug more in, plug a Raspberry Pi in, while Morkborg is like a on fire Raspberry Pi you pulled out of the garbage, and it's really cool to look at, but you know that, you're there for a short time, not a long time. Look, ShadowDark's got a lot more ports to plug things into, okay? That's ultimately where this computer metaphor starts and stops. All in all, if you are OSR curious, but only a D&D player, or if you're a DM looking to shake it up, you'd be really hard-pressed not to pick up the core book for ShadowDark. You're gonna find it useful. You're gonna find the tools in there really good. It's presented in a very nice way, and you'll probably end up running it and enjoying it with a table of people and laughing the whole way through, even amongst the most horrific falls in the pits and tripping and falling in darkness and being eaten alive by hobgoblins, djinn, and other various beasties. But yeah, I'm actually really glad that I've been playing games before reviewing them. Shout out to Quinn's Quest for normalizing that. Oh my God. Anyway, make sure to subscribe to MPT, and I'll be back whenever. I'm working at a store, so I gotta go edit this now.